But I want to ask you about because you were talking about self-interest, and what exactly do you mean when you use that phrase?
I mean, that which is in the interest of the individual, and what I mean, and when I think about interest, I mean that which promotes an individual's flourishing, happiness,
Hmm.
well-being. And I think some of those things are universal. That is, I think there's certain principles that every individual must pursue if they're going to achieve flourishing and happiness. And then, of course, there are lots of optional values in terms of the particulars. Those are all personal and those are all going to be different. But they are guiding principles, and those are the moral principles. So I view morality. Morality is that field in philosophy that should teach you how to live a flourishing, successful, prosperous, ultimately happy life. That's the function of the field of morality. And that's how Aristotle, by the way, viewed it.
Hmm. Can self-interest lead people down either destructive paths for themselves or for everyone around them?
No, because fundamentally, if you think about what's in your self-interest, the fundamental thing to now look, you can make mistakes, you can make errors that lead to self-destruction,
Right, right.
but I'm not counting errors, right? We can
Yeah.
always make mistakes. Fundamentally, what is required to live a self-interested life is to live as a human being and to live by your nature. And what does that mean? That means to be rational. So the great moral achievement is to be a rational animal, is to be a rational being, is to live rationally. And I think if you live rationally, if you think through what you're about to do and why you're about to do it, and you think about your motivations and you think about the consequences, then you're very unlikely to go down a path that leads to self-destruction. And if you actually think about the kind of world you want to live in and kind of relationship you want to have with other people, because other people are really, really important to your own well-being, then you're not gonna engage in actions that destroy other people's lives. That'll lead to living in a kind of society that is, destructive to your own happiness and your own well-being.
Well, yeah, I guess why I was asked for the definition or how you're perceiving it is because I think most people when they hear the term self-interest, like people perceive it as being like selfish and it's kind of
Mhm.
in like try to figure out the difference because
There
I
is
guess like
no
an
difference.
example.
Selfish is the same thing. The
Mhm.
difference, the only thing is that we've turned it into a dirty word, or a negative word, an evil word.
Right,
But
right.
that's because a morality of altruism, a morality that tells you that your moral purpose in life should be to sacrifice to others, and that's the most noble thing you can do, and is live like Mother Teresa. A morality like that, wants to make sure that you're not attracted by an alternative. So they make the alternative sound so horrific and disgusting. What does it mean to be selfish? It's to lie, cheat, steal, backstab, think only about the short term, party all day, party all night. Who cares about the future? If that's what selfish means, then okay, all I've got is altruism. It's the only moral code I have. And most people hold those two alternatives as the only two things possible.
Hmm.
And what Ayn Rand is saying is no, there's actually a third alternative, which is to be actually selfish, which means to actually care about yourself, which means to actually view your life over the long run and to view yourself as a human being and therefore as rational and to live that kind of life. And that's what morality should be about. So to live a rational, long-term, self-interested life is what she means when she says to be selfish.
So like for example, what would be how would it be not self-interested for like a private equity firm, say they do some kind of LBO, they buy some company, they leverage it with debt, and then they can't pay it off, so they gut the company, and they go away with a bunch of profit when they got the company and sell it for parts, but the company falls apart and all those people lose their jobs. Would the people doing that from the private equity standpoint who made all the money, are they acting as self-interested actors in that moment?
Maybe. It might be very difficult for them, for example, to buy another company. Let me just say, I don't buy the description you just made. I don't
Hmm.
think it works financially. That is, I don't think you can do what you just described doing. And we can go into in examples. I'm a finance guy. I've studied LBOs. I'm a huge fan of LBOs. I think LBOs are very healthy. And what you describe, I think, is just a caricature of what actually happens. But let's say that did happen. They were just nasty people, and somehow they figured out a way how to screw everybody else and make money for themselves. Well, if I'm the guy that they're approaching now, to buy the company from, and typically, I might even keep an equity stake because that's how a lot of LBOs happen is when you buy something, you keep an out. Well, I don't want to have anything to do with these people because they're going to screw me. They screwed the last bunch of people. Why would they not screw me? And in the long run, it's probably not in the interest of a private equity firm to function that way. Again, I don't think private equity functions that way. I think part of its success is part of how they've grown so much is a consequence of the fact that they don't function that way.
Hmm.
That private equity is overall win, 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 win. Yes, there might be some losers, but in the big picture, it's a massive win for almost everybody. But we could get into the details of some examples
Oh
if
yeah,
you.
we don't have to get into details of the specifics. I'm just trying to think of like more
Just
on
just
the
to let the audience know, LBO is a leveraged buyout. Just no one
Leveraged.
really said it.
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, but
that's
I'm just
okay.
trying to think of it more on like a conceptual level because I know that like
Yeah, I mean at
me and
the
Adam
concept.
believe a lot about the
Yeah,
importance of democracy is that kind of aligning that the leader's interests are with the people because if you have these situations where you have like monarchies or dictatorships, they only like the leader, at least from how I would define it, could be entirely self-interested in that they are extracting resources from as many people as possible, and as long as they can pay off, the military and the people in charge, like that's going to be totally fine for them, and they could
sure.
live a successful, in finger quotes, a successful life where they're rich and have kids and all these other things while everyone else
Sure.
is suffering.
So I would say that any self-interested person who was offered the job of king or dictator would turn it down.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in your self-interest to be in that position. It's not in your self-interest to rule over others. It's not in your self-interest to exploit other people. If assuming it's real exploitation, it's not in your self-interest to lie or cheat or steal. I tell people all the time, if you're not sure about lying, just try it. Like try it for a day. Lie to your best friend, for a day and see what happens, or lie to your boss for a day and see what happens. It's not in your self-interest. It'll come back and destroy you. And the same thing, by the way, is and stealing is the same thing. People who have done pyramid schemes and stolen, they're miserable, pathetic, unhappy people. Bernie Madoff being a great example of that. I don't know. You guys may be too young to know who Bernie Madoff was,
No,
but
No,
we know.
we know Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
Bernie Madoff is a great example of somebody who said he's happier in jail than he was before he was caught because stealing and deceiving other people is unbelievably damaging to one's own psyche.
Didn't he lie to a bunch of people though? He's probably
Oh,
lying now.
unbelievable lies. He was a horrible human being. I mean, he was just, but he lived it, right? So he couldn't sleep. He was constantly in fear of being caught, not by the police, but his family and his best friends might catch him that
Right,
he's
yeah.
stealing their money. It's just not a good strategy. So Bernie Madoff is a good example of how lying, cheating, stealing, exploiting other people is self-destructive, not self-interested. Oh, take Stalin. Take somebody like Stalin, right? You say, oh, well, he had all the power in the world. He did self-interested things. Well, why was he so miserable and afraid? He lived in constant fear. And, one of his best friends was the guy who ran the KGB, and yet he was afraid of him. He constantly thought the guy was going to kill him. And he couldn't have any honest human relationship with anybody because he constantly lived in fear. You cannot find me an example of anybody who was a king or authoritarian who actually was self-interested in the sense that he lived a flourishing, successful life. I mean, maybe this is why, you wouldn't want that job. You wouldn't want that job because it cannot lead you to actual success in life.
Hmm. In terms,
And
okay, I understand what
run
you're
the
saying.
experiment, right? Right. Run the
Right.
thought experiment or run the historical experiment, and you'll see that it just doesn't work. What works is being productive and being honest and having integrity and living a life of pride where you're proud of your own moral character. So that is what is going to lead you to be successful and happy. not sacrificing to other people, but also not asking other people to sacrifice to you. Living by your own means,
Mm-hmm.
by your own work and being successful. It's why anytime we inhibit people's ability to think for themselves, work for themselves, we inhibit their ability to be successful and happy.
Why
And I
do
think
you
the state, for example, is incredibly destructive of human happiness as a
Mhm.
concept.
Why do you think that so many people engage in that self-destructive behavior of lying, cheating, and stealing then?
Well, because a lot of things. One is we don't teach them a proper morality. We teach them a morality that says don't lie, not because lying is bad for you. We teach them don't lie because you should care about other people more than you care about yourself. And they go, yeah, but I don't really care about other people that much. And I feel like lying. And we never tell them don't act on your feelings. Act only in reason, act only on rationality. If Bernie Madoff had sat down for like 10 minutes before he made that first lie, before he deceived that first guy, and thought it through, thought what happens in pyramid schemes, thought about how this was going to play out, if he thought about it, if he'd been rational about it, he would have never done it. When we get into trouble, when almost anybody gets into trouble, they get into trouble and afterwards they go, "Ugh, I should have thought about it more," right? Because we follow our emotions. Emotions lead you into trouble. Not thinking, in other words, leads you into trouble. So we teach people a false morality, a morality of self-sacrifice. They reject that, but they have no alternative. They're not taught Ayn Rand's morality, which is a morality to achieve flourishing and happiness. Nobody teaches that. So they have this dichotomy of I can be self-sacrifice and live for other people. I don't want to do that. That sounds boring and sucks. Or I can steal some money and party all day. I'd rather do that. And even though it's self-destructive. And the third alternative, which is what I'm advocating for, is not even on the table. Nobody even knows it exists. So I think it's the right morality. It's a morality that, other than two philosophers in all of human history, has not been advocated for.
Mhm.
And it's a morality that would change the world if it was advocated for.
Hmm. Adam,
Just
did
on
you?
on the Bernie Madoff thing.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me to separate the idea of status. It's just integral to my worldview. It seems like Bernie Madoff, his reputation was built on sand. Like trustworthiness is a form of status, but wealth is also a form of status. So Bernie Madoff thought, I will take the shortcut to the status. And this is why he was constantly conflicted, because he knew if anyone found out, his status was really fake. It was a fraudulent form of status. And as soon as everybody found out, his status would plummet.
Sure. I mean, that could have been his motivation. I don't know, but it could have just been purely the money. It could have just been the money. I want money. I'm going to take the shortcut to get money. Money will buy me a yacht. Money will buy me a nice house. Money will buy me whatever. So there could have been a bunch of different motivations. Status might have been one of them. This is the sense in which status is a destructive motivation. Don't be motivated by status. Don't be motivated by money. Be motivated by achieving, achieving through production what you are capable of achieving for its own sake, for the sake of producing, for the sake of creating, for the sake of building. And so Bernie did all those things, but he also had to realize one of the reasons he was nervous was not just because maybe people would discover and he'd lose status, but how about jail? That made him nervous, that he would go to jail, that he would lose all the money, not only because it would reduce his status, but also because he couldn't spend it, and that he would lose the love of the people around him. I mean, a lot of the people around him loved him because they thought he was an honest, productive, good human being. And when they would discover that he was not an honest, good human being, maybe they would stop loving him, and that's his family. That's not a status. That's an issue of wanting the people you love to love you back. It is interesting that his son, basically, Bernie Madoff was turned into the police by his sons. His two sons turned him in. One of those sons committed suicide about a year after that.
I remember.
So Bernie Madoff just had created for himself a horrible life. And again, my point is, if you pursue status as an end, or if you pursue lying, cheating, stealing, that's not selfish. You don't gain from it. You lose. you actually live a horrible, pathetic life.
Well, convincing people of that, I think, is difficult. Obviously, people tend to learn the hard way. So I totally agree with what you're saying about the honesty.
It should be, but it shouldn't be, because we all know that in third grade. I mean, we all learn it very early. We learn what happens when we try to grab a toy from somebody else. We learn what happens when we lie. But yes, it's an achievement. Look, it's an achievement to think of man as a rational being. It's an achievement to realize that happiness is related to rationality and related to the long term, not to the short term. All of those are achievements, and yeah, it's not easy to the achievements are not easy, and we're obviously at a point in civilization where the world is not quite ready for this particular achievement. It's something we're struggling with.